This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute professional medical advice. Please consult with your doctor or a qualified healthcare specialist before starting any new vitamins or supplements mentioned in this video. Use of this information is at your own risk. Your legs aren't just getting old, they might be starving. Robert fell 3 times in 30 days. Blood everywhere, dignity gone. He thought it was muscle loss, but a simple blood test revealed a terrifying deficiency that affects millions of seniors. The solution wasn't surgery, it was in his kitchen. Your legs aren't just getting old, they might be starving. Robert fell 3 times in 30 days. Blood everywhere, dignity gone. He was convinced it was severe muscle loss, a natural and cruel part of aging that he simply had to accept. He was wrong. A simple investigation revealed a terrifying deficiency that affects millions of seniors, leaving their muscles suffocating from the inside out. The solution wasn't surgery, and it wasn't a lifetime of physical therapy. It was hiding in his kitchen. Welcome to ElderFit Nutrition. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. If you are ready to uncover the truth about your health and refuse to let age dictate your mobility, please hit that subscribe button right now. Your support gives us the motivation to keep researching and sharing these life-saving stories with you. Now, let's talk about the nightmare that Robert, a 72-year-old former construction engineer, found himself living. For 40 years, Robert was a man made of steel. He had spent his life climbing scaffolding, balancing on beams, and trusting his body to carry him through 12-hour shifts. He was the kind of man who didn't know the meaning of the word fragile. But time is a thief, and it stole his confidence not with a sudden heart attack, but with a slow, creeping betrayal of his own foundation. It started subtly, a slight tremor when he walked down the church steps, a feeling of hollowness in his knees when he stood up from his recliner. He ignored it, blaming a bad night's sleep or the weather. But the body keeps the score, and soon the warnings turned into catastrophes. The first fall happened in the grocery store, reaching for a carton of milk. One moment he was standing, the next he was on the linoleum floor, surrounded by concerned strangers. He brushed it off as a slip. But the second fall, just weeks later in his garden, shattered his denial. He wasn't doing anything strenuous. He was simply stepping backward to water a rose bush. His right leg didn't just bend, it collapsed. It felt as though the bone had turned to water. He hit the concrete hard, bruising his hip and his pride, lying there for 10 minutes before he could summon the strength to crawl to a bench. The third fall was the breaking point. It happened in the safety of his own bathroom. The resulting injury required stitches above his eye, but the psychological wound was far deeper. Robert became terrified. He stopped going for walks. He stopped gardening. He sat in his chair, paralyzed by the fear that the next time he stood up, his hip would snap. He looked at the aluminum walker his daughter had bought him with a mix of hatred and resignation. He felt like a prisoner in his own home, watching his world shrink to the 4 walls of his living room. He went to his doctor, desperate for answers. He underwent the standard battery of tests. The doctor looked at his charts, sighed, and gave him the diagnosis that millions of seniors hear every year: sarcopenia, muscle atrophy, normal aging. "Robert," the doctor said, "you are 72. Your muscles are just getting smaller and weaker. It happens to everyone. There is nothing we can really do to reverse it. You need to accept the walker to prevent further injury." Robert left that office feeling like his life was effectively over. He was told that his engine was broken and that he was destined for a slow decline into immobility. But here is the tragic irony. The doctor was wrong. Robert's muscles weren't wasting away in the traditional sense. They were still there. They still had mass. The problem wasn't the engine. The problem was the fuel. His muscles were clinically starving for oxygen, rendering them unable to generate force. He didn't need a walker. He needed to breathe at a cellular level. But nobody had ever checked his oxygen delivery efficiency. Nobody had looked at the root cause. Before we reveal exactly how Robert turned this tragedy around, I want you to pause and think about your own situation. Here is a question for you to consider. Do you believe that becoming frail and prone to falling is an unavoidable part of getting older? Please type A or B in the comments below. A, yes, it is a natural part of aging that we must accept. B, no, it is often a sign of a hidden deficiency that can be fixed. Let us know what you think in the comments, and keep watching, because the solution Robert found might just save your legs too. Robert was ready to surrender to the inevitability of the wheelchair, but his daughter was not. She refused to accept that her father, a man who had built skyscrapers and carried steel beams, was now destined to wither away in a recliner. Driven by a desperate hope, she sought a second opinion, not from another general practitioner who would simply prescribe pain management, but from a specialist in functional medicine who focused on the root causes of cellular decline. The consultation was different from the start. This new doctor did not glance at a chart and dismiss Robert's condition as simple aging. Instead, he conducted a physical examination of Robert's legs that was thorough and precise. He pressed on the calves and the quadriceps, noting the texture and the density of the tissue. He looked Robert in the eye and said something that changed everything. He told Robert that his muscles had not wasted away. The mass was still there, preserved from decades of hard labor. The hardware was intact, but the software was failing. Robert's muscles were not dead. They were dormant. They were incapable of generating force because they were chemically suffocating. To understand why Robert was falling, the specialist explained, one must understand the basic fuel of human movement. Every time you stand up, climb a stair, or take a step, your muscle fibers must contract. This contraction requires a massive burst of energy called ATP. Your body produces ATP through a process that is entirely dependent on oxygen. If you cut off the oxygen supply to a car engine, it stalls, no matter how new or powerful the engine is. Robert's legs were stalling. His blood was circulating, but it was not delivering oxygen efficiently enough to meet the demands of his muscle tissue. The previous doctor saw a weak engine. This specialist saw an empty fuel tank. The blood work confirmed the hypothesis. Robert was suffering from a critical deficiency, but not in the vitamins or minerals that are typically advertised to seniors. He was lacking a specific compound that acts as a supercharger for oxygen delivery. The specialist pulled up a diagram on his computer screen to show Robert two molecules side by side. One was hemoglobin, the molecule in human blood responsible for carrying oxygen. The other was chlorophyll, the compound that gives plants their green color. Robert was stunned to see that the two molecules were virtually identical. They shared the same porphyrin ring structure, a complex web of atoms. The only difference was the center atom. Hemoglobin holds iron at its core, while chlorophyll holds magnesium. Because of this molecular twinning, when chlorophyll is introduced into the human body, it mimics the behavior of hemoglobin. It does not just sit in the stomach. It enters the bloodstream and dramatically enhances the blood's capacity to transport oxygen. The science is profound, yet often overlooked. When a person consumes high concentrations of this plant blood, it acts as a transfusion of vitality. The specialist explained that by correcting this deficiency, they could potentially increase the oxygen delivery to Robert's muscle tissue by up to 70%. 70% more oxygen meant 70% more raw material for ATP production. It meant that the dormant muscle fibers in Robert's legs could finally wake up and fire with the intensity they had 20 years ago. The problem was not that Robert was too old to walk. It was that his cells were too starved to function. The solution was not a surgery or a synthetic drug, but a powerful, natural catalyst that would flood his system with the breath of life it had been craving. The specialist laid out the solution, and to Robert's surprise, it did not involve a prescription pad or a trip to the pharmacy. The medicine that would save his legs was sitting in the produce section of a health food store. It was wheatgrass. While many leafy greens contain chlorophyll, the specialist explained that wheatgrass is in a league of its own. It is the young grass of the wheat plant, harvested before the grain forms, and it is arguably the most concentrated source of chlorophyll on the planet. Ounce for ounce, it packs a punch that spinach or kale simply cannot match. It is essentially pure, liquid solar energy. However, the specialist was strict about the protocol. This was not about casually adding a salad to dinner. To reverse the cellular starvation in Robert's muscles, he needed a therapeutic dose delivered in a very specific way. The instruction was clear: 2 ounces of pure wheatgrass juice every single day. No more, no less. 2 ounces is roughly the size of a standard double-shot glass, a small amount of liquid that carries a massive biological payload. The timing of this dose was just as critical as the substance itself. Robert was instructed to drink his green shot first thing in the morning, immediately after waking up. The stomach had to be completely empty. The specialist explained the logic. When the stomach is full of food, digestion is slow, and the potent enzymes and chlorophyll in the wheatgrass can get trapped, diluted, or destroyed by stomach acids before they ever reach the bloodstream. But on an empty stomach, the absorption is rapid. The liquid bypasses the heavy digestive work and is absorbed almost directly through the intestinal lining, flooding the system with oxygen-boosting power in a matter of minutes. There was a catch, of course. Wheatgrass does not taste like a milkshake. It tastes like what it is, raw, potent grass. It has an intense, earthy, slightly bitter flavor that can be a shock to the palate. The specialist offered a practical tip for those who might struggle with the intensity. Chase it immediately with a slice of orange or a small sip of orange juice. The citric acid cuts through the grassy aftertaste instantly, making the daily ritual manageable rather than a chore. Finally, they discussed the cost and sourcing. Fresh wheatgrass juice from a juice bar can be expensive, easily costing $3 to $5 a shot. For a retiree on a fixed income, that adds up quickly. The specialist suggested a more sustainable route, buying frozen wheatgrass shots. These are flash frozen immediately after juicing to lock in the nutrients and are available at many health food stores. While still an investment, they offer convenience and potency. For the ultimate cost-saving measure, the specialist pointed out that one can buy a growing kit and juice the grass at home, bringing the cost down to mere pennies per day. But for now, Robert was to start with the frozen shots to ensure consistency and immediate results. The path was set. 2 ounces, empty stomach, every morning. Robert began his journey with skepticism, staring at the small plastic cup of dark green liquid with a mixture of hope and dread. The taste was as intense as he had been warned, a raw, grassy punch that made him shudder. But the memory of the cold bathroom tiles against his cheek was enough to make him swallow it down. For the first few days, nothing seemed to change. He checked his legs for a miracle, but they looked the same. Doubt began to creep in. Was he just drinking expensive lawn clippings while his body continued to fail? Then came day 5. It was a small moment, almost imperceptible to anyone else. Robert was sitting in his favorite armchair, watching the morning news. When the commercial break started, he stood up to get a glass of water. It wasn't until he was halfway to the kitchen that he froze. He realized he had just stood up without pushing off the armrests. For the first time in months, his quadriceps had engaged silently and effortlessly, lifting his body weight without a tremble. He stood in the middle of his living room, testing his balance, feeling a faint but undeniable hum of stability that had been missing for so long. By the second week, the small spark of hope had ignited into a steady flame of confidence. The defining moment happened at the local supermarket, the very place where his first fall had stolen his dignity. He walked through the sliding doors alone, leaving his cane in the car. He pushed the cart not for support, but simply to carry his groceries. He navigated the aisles, turned corners sharply, and reached for items on high shelves. His knees, which used to feel like hollow reeds ready to snap, now felt like solid timber. He didn't just walk, he strode. The fear that had acted as a mental cage was dissolving, replaced by the thrill of simple mobility. The true climax of his recovery arrived at the end of week 3. His granddaughter was getting married, an event Robert had dreaded because he feared being a burden or making a scene with a fall. But on the 19th day of the protocol, Robert put on his best suit and walked into the church with his head held high. He climbed the front steps without gripping the railing. During the reception, as the music swelled, he watched the couples swaying on the dance floor. He felt a sensation he hadn't felt in a decade, the urge to move. He turned to his wife, extended his hand, and asked her to dance. She looked at him with wide, fearful eyes, whispering a warning about his hip. Robert just smiled and pulled her close. He stepped onto the floor, his legs strong and responsive, anchoring him to the earth. As they moved to the music, tears streamed down his face. 3 weeks ago, he was bleeding on his bathroom floor, terrified of dying. Tonight, He was dancing. It wasn't just a recovery, it was a resurrection. Today, Robert is not just a survivor of a near tragic fall. He is a testament to the resilience of the human body when given the right tools. He never stopped the protocol. That morning ritual of 2 ounces of green vitality became as essential to him as breathing. To save money and ensure the freshest possible supply, he eventually stopped buying the frozen shots and started growing his own trays of wheatgrass on his kitchen windowsill. It costs him mere pennies a day now, a negligible investment compared to the alternative. He often looks at those small green shoots and thinks about the cost of a hip replacement surgery, the price of a motorized wheelchair, and the immeasurable expense of losing one's independence. He realized that health is not bought in a hospital, it is cultivated in the kitchen. If you see a reflection of your own struggle in Robert's story, pay close attention. If you have decent muscle mass, but find yourself unable to generate the force needed to climb stairs. If you feel unstable on your feet despite having no specific injury. If your doctor has dismissed your fears as simple aging, do not accept that verdict. Your muscles may not be dying, but they are likely starving. The oxygen starvation that nearly put Robert in a wheelchair is a silent epidemic, but it is one you can fight. You have a choice to make right now. You can continue down the path of gradual decline, hoping that your next step won't be the one that results in a fracture. Or you can take control. Commit to just 1 month, 30 days of flooding your body with chlorophyll, 30 days of waking up your dormant cells. You do not need a prescription, and you do not need permission to save your own legs. Go to the store, buy the wheatgrass, and start tomorrow morning. You deserve to walk without fear. You deserve to stand tall and sturdy, knowing your legs will support you for years to come. Do not wait for the fall to force your hand. Your journey to strength begins with a single shot. Ultimately, Robert's story teaches us that the narrative of decline we are fed is not always the absolute truth. We are conditioned to believe that once we reach a certain age, the body simply shuts down, that weakness is inevitable, and that pain is a tenet we must live with forever. But Robert proved that the human body is not a machine that breaks beyond repair. It is a biological system that is constantly seeking balance. When his legs failed him, it was not because they were too old. It was because they were missing a fundamental building block of life. By simply reintroducing that missing element, oxygen, delivered through the power of chlorophyll, he didn't just patch a problem, he rewrote his future. Think about the years Robert could have wasted sitting in that chair, staring out the window, regretting the life he used to have. Think about the fear that could have kept him prisoner. Instead, he chose to look for a different answer. He chose to believe that his body was capable of more, provided he gave it the right tools. This journey from the emergency room floor to the dance floor is a powerful reminder that vitality is not strictly reserved for the young. It belongs to anyone willing to nurture their cells and listen to what their body is desperately asking for. The difference between a life of fragility and a life of strength often comes down to the smallest decisions we make in our kitchen each morning. The deepest lesson here is that we must stop normalizing suffering as a symptom of aging. Just because something is common among seniors does not mean it is normal or unfixable. Robert was told his condition was normal aging, a label that almost cost him his independence. Adopt a mindset of investigative health. When you face a limitation, whether it is weak legs, brain fog, or low energy, do not just accept it. Ask why. Is there a fuel you are missing? Is there a deficiency you haven't checked? Start small. You don't need to run a marathon tomorrow. Just commit to one small positive change, like the wheatgrass protocol, and give it time to work. Trust in your body's incredible ability to repair itself when given the right resources. What is the one activity you miss doing the most because your legs or body feel weak? Is it gardening, dancing, or simply walking in the park? Please share your answer in the comments below. Your stories inspire us and help others realize they are not alone in this journey. If you found value in Robert's story and want to discover more natural ways to reclaim your health and vitality, please subscribe to ElderFit Nutrition right now. Your subscription gives us the motivation to keep digging for the truth and bringing you the most helpful health solutions. Thank you for watching, and here is to your strength.